You think Joey's in our Zoom session?
Yeah, it says Renee Riley.
Okay. For your Unit 1 exam, you guys have figured out so much about hypergrade and just been learning things and going crazy. This one has 2 test cases. We had that 3 test cases in that last one, and that threw a couple of people for a loop, which is totally understandable. Whenever you're looking at the test case, you might want to even compare this to your source code and look at what line of code is making each line come out. So this might be, you know, line 7 in your source code, maybe line 10, 11, 12, 15, or whatever. But then if you just totally narrow it down like that, grab control of it. Don't look at it and think, I don't know what it wants, I don't know what it's doing. Zoom in on it, see what it wants, see what it's doing. When you really focus in, and you see, oh, this line is coming from this line of my code, then you're going to start seeing those details. When we look at hypergrade and all these other things, they're not designed to make you guys crazy. It's designed to help you to start seeing those details. Because just like looking at a line of code and being able to read that code is important for a programmer, right? That was a skill that probably didn't have at the beginning of your 120 class, that now you can probably look at code and pretty well understand what's going on with it because you learn to read it. Now we want to really learn to look at those details and figure out exactly where we have something that's not exactly the same. So again, it's not the end of the world. We're not running a heart monitor system here or anything like that. We're just printing out some output and trying to get it to match up. So we get it to be perfect if we can. So let's do a couple more loops to kind of practice for that one. And then we'll do a Quizlet. This first one is kind of a mix of a while and a for. And the last project we were working on was our for loop. So let's open that back up and just add a couple more things.
Could you possibly send me a copy of that?
I can. I think you'll just have to create a new project. And then you can start with us here because we're going to be creating a new project because there's actually several items in here.
Okay.
So I would have to zip it up, which would be kind of a delay. So usually that's why we post the Zoom videos for you guys so that you can watch that video and get caught up with your code that you're missing. Try to get a stopping point at the end of class so that we can start with a new spot the next time. So we were looking at Chapter 3 for loops. And yeah, if you don't have this one, no worries, just create a new project. And we'll take off from there. So what we want to do for this project is we're just going to do one more practice. This one's going to have a while loop and a for loop in it. So I'm going to choose Add, New Project. And if you had to create a new project from scratch, you don't need to do this because you already have the project. I'm going to name ours More Practice. Some days you can think of better names than others. Now I want to rename our program.cs. Do what, sir? And I'll rename it More Practice.
Oh, my new project option is listen, but I couldn't tell. Sorry.
You're fine. I want to say yes. Now in all of our practice projects, we've been putting code quickly, and we haven't been doing a lot of commenting unless we were talking about a specific item that we really wanted to bring attention to. Because again, we don't want to overload our code with comments so that you guys couldn't really see what was going on. But let's do some comments so that we can kind of review what's required for things when you turn things in. I'm going to put my comment above my class. I'm going to press enter here at that opening curly brace, and do 3 slashes. And that type of comment is going to automatically open up space for me to type some things. I'm going to put that this class is more practice and that I'm the developer. And the date that we started working on it. And then our purpose, we'll just say that we want to practice a while loop and for loop. So this one, we're not even going to try to make it to where we're doing anything important and meaningful, but we'll just do a little bit of practice. Now, I can't tell you how much it means whenever I'm looking at things and grading. I have hypergrade just like you guys do, so you get a little bit of feedback. Even if you're waiting for me to enter your grade, you sort of know what you did. And then I'm taking that hypergrade stuff and trying to coordinate that with everything that's in Canvas. So it's really nice to see your name in those things and know that I'm looking at the right person's stuff as I go. And it's really interesting how many people who like to grab somebody else's code don't even change the name in there so we can catch them. Okay, so let's do in this one, let's declare a variable or two. We're just going to declare a variable that's an integer named counter. So we just want to do a little practice loop here. Let's put a comment. This is going to be a loop. I bet you would have figured it out without that. We're going to start it with our while keyword. And for this one, just like we've done in some of our other examples, we're going to run this while loop while our counter is less than 11. Look how helpful everything has been. The blue squiggly lines are actually reminding me, if I mouse over it, that that loop control variable counter is never changed inside the loop. So I have a chance to create an infinite loop here if I don't take care of that. So that's pretty handy and helpful. Now inside my counter loop, I'd like to write out a line. I think I better go fix my using clauses. I want to add in that using static system.console. And then I should be able to get away with not typing that console keyword. I just want to write a line. And we want to use some special formatting for this line just to practice too. So to get rid of these silly IntelliSense thing, what I want to start out with is parameter 0, whoops, comma 5. What does that mean? How could I find out? What would be a good way to Google that to find out what that means? I should definitely put the word C# in my search, right? Because otherwise I'm going to get stuff for Java and Python and 57 other languages. But I'll do C# output formatting. Maybe that would be a good place to start. And I see that a link that Google has found for me right away is on the Microsoft website, the Documents website. That might be good.
They did make the programming language.
Do what?
They did make the programming language, so they probably know how to use
They
it.
probably do, but they might not be able to explain it to us in a way we can understand. We'll have to see. Do you see any that are numbers like that?
No.
We're going to have to try it. I see that there's like E2 and D5. So we're going to have to try it and see what it does, because that'll be a lot faster than trying to search for all that information. Now, after we print out that first parameter, we want to do a tab character. So we'll do the \t. And then we want another parameter that we're also going to specify with that modifier of 5 and another tab. And finally, another parameter with a 5. Whenever we have our formatting string, do what? Yeah, whenever we have our formatting string like that, we have to make sure that all of our formatting stuff is within our double quotes. It's trying to help me there so much. And then after our double quotes, we'll do our comma to say what we want to use as parameter replacement values. Well, for our first parameter, parameter 0, we want to use our counter.
My thing's not.
What's it doing?
Every time I try to make the curly braces, it adds an enter. Huh?
Thank you. You see what it's doing? Now, after we have our counter printout, we're going to do a math function using the power. And so we want to take our counter to the power of 2. And then one more for our last parameter. We want to, again, use the math.pow function and take our counter to the power of 3. So those are the 3 things that we're going to print out here in this loop. The value of our counter, the value of our counter squared, and the value of our counter cubed. After our while loop, I'll put a comment there that that's the end of our while loop. And then my green curly braces are the end of my main method. My hot pink ones are the end of my class. And finally, my orange ones are the end of my namespace. And I wanted to do that because I want to put one line of code after my while loop. So I want to make sure that I get it after my closing curly brace for my while loop, but before my closing curly brace for my main method, because I still want it to be within that main method. So for this one, I'll just put our read key. So not much different than one we did earlier, but we're trying to throw in a little bit of fancy formatting here and doing a little bit more math. Let's run this. Let's see, my more practice, I'll go ahead and set it as my startup project and run it. Yes, sir? Oh, it is. What do we need? Counter plus plus. Should I put that after the while loop or inside the while loop? Inside the while loop. I put it after it. We'll still get an infinite loop, won't we? Try it if you want. It won't hurt anything. I'll comment out the incrementing of my counter and run this with a infinite loop. I want to save all first, just to be safe. I'll run it. And I'm just going to get 0 over and over and over, right? Because I never changed the value of my counter. And I can watch my memory just being sucked up. So I'll close that. Add in that code to increment the counter. And now when we run it, we should have some nice output that shows us those numbers. Bless you. The squared and the cubed version. Has everybody got it? Is it okay? All right, all right, all right, all right. So let's add a for loop to this program. I want it to go after the end of our while loop, but before the read key. So again, right in there before we are ending our program with our read key statement. Let's put a message I'm going to do a right line. Couldn't make up my mind there. And let's put something like now a for loop. And in our for loop, we're going to declare an integer. And for this one, we're going to name it kind of long. We're going to call it for count. We're going to start with it a value of 0. We're going to run this loop while it's less than 11. And we're going to add to it each time we execute the loop. So we should be doing pretty much exactly the same thing as we did in that while loop. So our output, we can do something along the same lines. I'm going to do parameter 0 for 5 and a tab and parameter 1, comma 5 and a tab and 2. Now, what I want to use is replacement values for all of those parameters. I want to use our for count, this counter that we created for our for loop. I'm going to do math.pow using our for count, and I want to take it to the power of 2. And then finally, math.pow, I want to take for count to the power of 3. Again, when we look at our syntax, where with C#, sometimes it's easiest to start at the end. I see my closing parenthesis at the end, closing all of the parameters that I'm sending to the right line statement. Anytime I have parentheses, that's a parameter, right? And then inside that, I see the parentheses holding the parameters I'm sending to the math.pow function. If I keep backing up, I see a comma indicating I have another parameter. And this is going to be, again, the parameter values that I'm sending to the math.pow function again.
You don't have a comma there. I mean a space.
Where?
On line 33.
Right there. So it's okay, right?
Oh.
So it's optional, but it would be better if there were a space, but some people don't like them, and it'll work either way. So if you look at somebody's code who likes to squish everything up, it'll usually work okay. Sometimes they'll get things confused, but it's usually okay. Now, one place is up here in these parameters. You can try getting rid of the spaces in those parameter values, and you should be okay also. If you start getting weird messages, you know it might be that we need a little bit more white space. But it is not, C# is not like Python, where Python is really, really dependent on white space. It just likes it because it makes it look a little bit more readable. So it's just kind of up to us. All right, now we should get both of our loops output. Let's try it. There we go. So we got the same thing for both of them. I'd like to write one more message out at the end, if everybody's is working okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll fix you up. Woohoo! Okay, the end of our for loop. Let's add something after that. Let's write one last line out, and I want to write out like the final value of counter is, and then I'm going to do a parameter 0 and a comma to say that the parameter replacement should use the variable counter. And then I want to copy this line, or 2 lines, and paste it, and I want to do the final value of for count. And then I want to use for count as a replacement variable. So what's our problem? It's like, it's okay with counter, but I've got some sort of syntax error with for count. Yes, sir?
Kind of like having a local variable inside of the method. It doesn't treat it outside of the method.
Exactly. It's our variable scope. So whenever we declared our counter variable, this variable is declared within the curly braces of the main method. So its scope is that main method. We can use it anywhere inside that main method. If we look down at our for count, its int statement, where it's declared, is within this for loop. So its scope is this for loop body, that set of curly braces. That's the only place that that variable is available. So once we get past our for loop, its scope has expired, per se, and it's not available anymore. So it's out of scope. So for our for loop, let's put a comment that to that effect. Our loop control variable for count has a scope that is limited to the for loop. We just want to remind ourselves that that scoping issue can cause us problems. So is there anything we could do about that? What if we really needed to see that variable afterwards? Yes, sir?
We could put it outside of the for loop where you declare the other variables. So then it's a public one.
Okay, let's do that. So I'm going to put it up here. For count. Now I've got an error on my for loop. It says this variable for count can't be declared in the scope because that name is already used in an enclosing scope. So what could I do to fix that?
Remove that.
Remove
the int.
Remove the int, exactly. Perfect. And so now instead of a variable that's local to our for loop, we have a variable that's local to our main method, so we can use it all throughout our main method. So good job. Let's save that one. Very, very good. And I would like to create a little one that's somewhat like your unit exam, not too much like it, but a little bit. So let's start out with a new project. Is everybody's working okay before we move away from this one? Got it all good? All right, let's create a new project then. Again, go to your solution and right-click on your solution and choose Add New Project again. And for this one, let's call it Continue Loop, just because we're going to be asking the user if they want to continue. So we're not going to be using that awful continue keyword or anything. Now let's rename our program.cs the same way. We'll call it Continue Loop and say yes.
You also need to set it as the default.
So it is the start.
Startup project, okay.
Sorry.
That's good, you're on it. We got it. Sometimes I can't think. Ooh, what have I done? I wasn't in the right place when I did that. So I'm going to go to the right place. Visual Studio is super context sensitive, meaning if you do something in the wrong place, it doesn't do exactly what you're expecting. I'm sure you've seen that. Visual Studio is a huge tool, and I know some of you have a lot more experience with it than others. So always remember that when you're looking around class, as some people have had a lot more classes than others. Makes a big difference. For this loop, we want to start out asking for some sort of input. Let's say we're going to ask for 2 numbers, okay? So this might be close to what we've done already, but we'll just ask for 2 numbers. So I'll put a flow chart up here and ask for 1 number. And then I'm going to ask for another number. You can see I don't have much handwriting that's very readable. I try to just type. Now, after I've asked for these 2 numbers, we'll do some sort of thing like maybe output, which is bigger? Is num1 greater than num2? If so, we'll output a message to that effect. If not, we'll output a message to that effect. And then either way, we'll ask the user if they would like to continue. Make my flowchart here beautiful. When they say yes, they want to continue, we'll ask them for a number again. If they say no, we'll just end that program and we'll just be done. So this is our beautiful flowchart of how we're going to do it. Now, it might be more meaningful to me than it is to you because I can read my writing, and it's kind of hard for me when I write things down. So I like to use Visio and things like that so other people can read it. But I want you to realize those tools that you learned in your 120 class are totally applicable, right? Think about it. How am I going to make this logic flow? How do I want this thing to work? Well, as I look at this, I see that I'm going to have kind of a main loop here where I'm going to ask them if they want to continue, and if they do, then I'm going to ask them for numbers again. Oops, I should have gone all the way up here to ask for the first number, huh? That's where our loop will start over again. So let's see what we can do. We could kind of start wherever we wanted to in this program. Let's start by declaring a variable for our continue question. We'll make it a string. Is a string the best data type for this if we're going to have them type a Y or an N?
No.
What should we use?
Float.
A float? I was thinking about something that holds non-numeric data, just one of them, like a char. Let's try a char, a character data type instead of a string, because we haven't really used one of those before. Either one would work, but we'll try it as a char so that we can see how char is just a little different. Now, when I'm working with a char data type, it's just one character. Let's call it continue, and we'll start out with it equal to a value of yes or Y. When I'm working with a char data type, because it's, why are you mad at me? Huh? It's very mad at me. I think that something's wrong. Let's go Google it. What in the world is it going crazy with? I want to do a C# char data type. Why are you being so mean to me? I'll look at .NET Pearls because they're always so helpful. Here they say char value equals something, and they've got it all working fine, and why it's mad at me. The what?
Number in the bracket factor, what the
Yeah, the code looks really different on the
theirs they have the like 0 and
Yeah, they were doing something a little different than what we're doing. Yeah, theirs is a little different. Well, we'll just make it a string then, and we'll come back and change it to a char when we're done. And so that it doesn't give us any trouble, because I think I've got something wrong here. Do you see it?
Yeah, well, I almost it makes it like another.
Because it's a reserved word?
Right.
Is it a reserved word? Okay, great. Well, maybe we can do a char data type then after all.
What would we call continue?
Well, let's try it. Something else. That sounds better. Oh, we can figure out these problems. You guys are such good troubleshooters. Now, lots of work there, isn't there? Sometimes it feels like that for every single statement, doesn't it? But you have to do a little bit of research, a little bit of troubleshooting, a little bit of figuring it out. That's okay. That's why you'll get the big bucks, right? So that's all right. So a char data type is one character, and we use single quotes. Now, that example that we brought up was doing something a little different. It was setting it up as a string and then pulling one char data type out of that string. So that example is a little bit further along than where we are. We are just saying, I want to create this variable CONT that is the value Y. Now let's create a loop here that uses it. One more thing to back up here in our using clauses. Using static system.console. Now, when I look at this flowchart, I almost think that this one would work well as a do while, wouldn't it? Because we want to ask them for their numbers the first time, no matter what, right? We're not going to ask them if they want to continue when they haven't even gotten started. So let's make it a do while. So we'll start out with the keyword do, and then our while part will say while our cont variable equals the letter Y. So inside our do while loop, to start with, let's just put a write statement. I'm going to start it with a \n because I want it to go to a new line, but I want their answer to end up on the same line as this message. So let's write out a statement, continue. And we'll put Y/N. Let's go ahead and put a space there. And then we want to read in their response into that keyword. Now we're going to have even more trouble here because of this silly char data type. It says you're going to read line, it's going to give you a string, but you're only wanting one character for this char data type. So it's causing us some trouble. I'm going to change this to a string. I think that I want you guys to understand that a char data type is just one character and that it could cause you to have some troubleshooting issues. But I don't want to go through those right now because I want us to be ready for our Unit 1 exam, not ready to battle with char data types today because you don't need a char data type in your program. And we'll just make everything happy by making it a string. Sometimes we have to leave our battles for when they're applicable. Choose our battles. Now for this loop, we should be working. We should be able to run this. We should see our message repeat asking if we want to continue. Let's try it. I'll do an uppercase yes.
There were build errors.
Do what?
Mine says that they were build errors.
Take a look at your error messages. Do you see it? Good job.
Using static console. There we go.
Now, is it working?
So it doesn't repeat.
Doesn't repeat? Make sure you do your uppercase Y.
Uh-huh.
Now, is there a way that we could take whatever the user types and turn it uppercase, or is there a way that we could add a condition to our while loop to accept a lowercase y?
I remember seeing something in the book, but I don't remember which page.
Wait, is that dot upper, I think?
Dot upper?
Something like that.
We could do that. Or we could do an or. Let's try an or. We haven't done that a lot. Let's say or cont equals lowercase y.
Can you put multiple ors in a while or a second?
You could.
Oh.
Just be careful when you're using ors and nots, because you can end up not doing exactly what you were thinking. Let's try it now and make sure our lowercase y works. And the to upper would be a great solution too. We just want to try something that we haven't done a lot of, which is either one, huh? Just getting started here with C#. All right, so beautiful. Now we've got all of this looping going on where we're kind of in a situation where we're prompting the user and then continuing. So let's add in our stuff to ask them for a number. And I want this to go above my right to continue message. I'll leave that down low. So I'm going to start out with a write statement. Enter number 1. Whenever we get that number 1 read, I've seen some really good code, some different ways of doing things that people have done. We can do a while loop with that try parse. So we could say while our try parse is not working, keep trying it, do an int.try parse on whatever we read from the console. Put that output someplace. We need a variable to hold that. I wasn't planning very well. I'm going to come up here to the top and create an integer for number 1 and number 2. I think I'll call them num1 and num2 so I don't have to. A little early in the morning for that. All right, so my output is going to be num1. Now, if I don't get valid output from the user or input, I'm going to output a line. I'm going to say something like invalid input. And then I'll repeat my earlier message, enter number 1. Now, if I wanted to, I could make this message a little different. You know, I could do something here, you know, it says, please enter a valid integer for number 1 or something like that, depending on how I wanted things to work. Now, let's see if that works. Let's take a look at it. We're outputting a message asking for our first number. We're using a while loop to continuously read whatever the user types. And if we can output that as an integer, we'll put it in our num1 variable. If we can't, we'll write out this message, that's invalid input. Please enter number 1, and we'll keep doing that until we get valid input. Let's try it. Okay, so I'm going to try an invalid integer. Okay, that worked. I got invalid input. Enter it again. Try another one. That worked. So I seem to not be able to get out of it.
Mine's not working.
What's it doing?
It says invalid expression term reference. What does that mean?
Let's see where you are.
I have the same number of left and rights. Right here.
Beautiful. Did it work? So can we copy that for our number 2 stuff? I know that sounds awful this morning. I'm going to try it. I'm going to label this end of while and then copy this block. Next week, we're going to start looking at methods. And so this would be a really good thing to make into a method because we would be able to call it repeatedly for as many numbers as we wanted. So we'll say enter number 2, number 2, num 2. So 3 places that I needed to change that from number 1 to number 2. So now we've got our code in to input 2 different numbers. Let's compare them and output something appropriately. If our num1 is greater and I'm just going to say num1 is greater, and I'll put an else. Num2 is greater. I need to replace my parameter with num1. And num2.
We're not using curly brackets there.
I didn't because it's just one line of code in each one, but you can and it won't cause any trouble. Now, the thing to notice is this indenting that I've done is not required, right? So if I hadn't indented under my else, this right statement would be lined up with all of this code that continues on. So it would be really confusing to somebody else looking at it because they would think that all of that stuff was going to happen as part of the else clause. So our indenting really helps people read things. Are we done? Does it work? Let's try it. We should be all set. I'm going to enter an invalid value, and I'll enter a valid value. For number 2, I'll enter something invalid, and then something valid. And then I should finally get my results. Num2 60 is greater. And of course, we could put more input there. Now, just like you're calculating for your Unit 1 exam, the continue message pops up, and I can say, yes, I want to continue, and start the whole thing over again. If I say anything but yes, it'll end. So that should be real similar to what you have for your Unit 1 exam. Just a little bit of difference in your questions. Everybody's working okay? Any trouble? Awesome. Save all that.
That format exception input string was not in correct format. Oh wait, I see it.
Do you see it? Oh, you're so good. Okay.
Oh.
I hope you guys have been using Quizlet and studying your vocab. Let's do a quick little review activity before as part of our lab, I guess. So we're going to do Quizlet Live. Have you done it before?
Yeah.
Good. I'll show you if you haven't. Do we have music? Let's turn it on. we do, there it is, it's that weird music. Okay, so for Quizlet Live, you want your phone or tablet, something portable if you can. And we want to go to www.quizlet.live and enter this code. Or you can come up here and scan this QR code. Now, if you use the computer, you'll be stuck and you'll have to really tell all of the other people around in your team that you're stuck. They have to come to you. So yeah, if you have your Wi-Fi, you should be able to use the OTC Wi-Fi to get to it without using your data plan. But if you're going to be short on data, don't use your phone. Someone can use mine if you need one. Oh, look at everybody going. They've changed the interface since I played it. Quizlet's a really good place to practice for our test, besides the practice test, because our test is pretty much vocab stuff. Some sample code snippets too. We should have 18, so we're missing a few. Look around, get some people going. Three more. Help them, find them, get them in here. We need two more. Where they are, where our people are. Is it not working for you? Have somebody help you? Come on now, come on now. We'll all wait for you. Finally. All right, I hope you guys don't get them on your team, but sorry if you do. All right, here's your team. Go find them. Let's go.
I get disconnected on
Oh, this is like a serious team. Okay, I think everybody's found their people. Where are we missing? Are we ready? Okay, if it disconnects, you should just be able to reconnect. If you remember, the rest of your team needs you because your device is important. Okay, you're going. Look at all of them. Remember, each of you guys have different answers. Got to look at all of them.
So before anybody okay, so we all realize that. So all of our emails are only one of our elements. No, no,
Remember, the best teams set their phones down side by side so they can all see them all. Now everybody's getting the hang of it. Oh, now we got some movement.